Good evening. My name is Matthew Ewing, and today is the 26th of August, 2012. We've been doing a three-part series on empathy, and it's time for the last concept, the spiritual concept, if you will, of empathy. And I stated previously that it's difficult for me to get exactly in front of the concepts that belong in this octave because, well, I know it from a specific perspective. There's multiple applications to any concept. There's at least two. There's more than two, but we'll focus on the main two because they're the ones that most people understand. The self-orientation and the others orientation. I could tell you the self-orientation of empathy as well as anyone who's ever existed. The others orientation is something that I uniquely challenge myself to understand within this lifetime. It's actually been my case study. It's the reason why I'm here. It's also the reason why you're here. I'll explain that in greater detail as we go up this octave. For right now, the spiritual concept is Pantheon, because it is basically the culmination of the last two talks where we talked about the concept of identity infusion, in essence infusing your identity into specific aspects of yourself, and the second one is the heart mind. If you fuse those two concepts together, you get an understanding of the active component of empathy, which is the Pantheon. It's basically understanding that you exist in multi-frequencies at any given moment, and that each one of those frequencies exists as a separate identification, a separate identity. It has its own life, its own drive. Never fool yourself. Your skin cells know that they're skin, and they have their own goals. They have drives and desires. It's not for you to, rather you can, if you would like to, dominate your skin and say, listen, I want you to look this way, and I want you to act this way. However, if you're looking for the most harmonic method of living, the best way to do it is to recognize that your skin cells or your heart cells or your mind, your brain cells, even those outside of you, all of the cell representations, they exist of their own accord. And to align yourself with the desires of their existence and then encourage them to potentiate to their fullest method. And then you get your skin looking the way that it wants to, backed by your consciousness. That's when you get the glow that you're looking for. It's not through chemical infusions and specific diets and topical ointments. I'm getting off topic. The Pantheon is first fundamentally based on the understanding of fragmentation. That as the prime creation, we fragmented ourselves into many when we are in fact one. Within this given lifetime, you do the same thing. You fragment the identification of that which is self, the I, into many, so that all of them can experience in a given moment varying facets of the life and give you the fruit of that information. We call it senses. It's why in any given moment there is literally more information processed by your vessel, by your vehicle, than at current you are actually aware of. It knows exactly the temperature, exactly the eddies of the flow of the wind, how many sensations are pressing against your skin, how many hair follicles are vibrating, how many thoughts are going through your head, how many breaths you've taken, how many heartbeats. All of these things are information that is given to the vehicle that is you, the actual consciousness. What arises to the conscious mind of the individual is that which they have labeled as important. So the task then is to realize that everything is important of its own accord, because everything exists at that same righteous identity that you do. The information that is relevant to your skin cell, to your heart cell, to your hair cell, is relevant to you, just as relevant as social information, as spiritual information. Do you understand what I mean? When you see the Pantheon as existing of its own accord, then you can recognize its natural motions and insinuate yourselves into those motions, not as the mediator, not as the dictator who's saying how the motions should play out, but as the active observer, the fan of the motion. And then what you start to see is the rhythmic contractions, the cycles of motion that we all are a part of. And I mean that literally. I'll put this in context by giving you an example you probably already know of. The water cycle, or the salination cycle on the planet, the rain, the evaporation, the clouds, the oceans. Recognize that each one of those things that I just named, clouds, rain, the ocean, evaporation, they never stop being the ocean. The thunderstorm is still the ocean. The raindrop is still the ocean. The water that we drink is still the ocean. It never stops being that, simply because it takes on another form. And the ocean never stops taking on sensory information from the other forms of itself that exist. Now recognize that each one of those forms is a righteous individual that is part of a righteous collective, that is part of a righteous whole. You can lose sight of that and say that the cloud is the cloud, the raindrop is the raindrop, the ocean is the ocean, the bay is the bay, the lake is the lake, the river is the river. If you wanted to do that, you could. And to a certain degree, you'd be right. It does exist in that form as righteous, sovereign, individual points of creation. However, it is a short-sighted point of view to not recognize that every individual point of creation ultimately is sanctioned by the whole of creation. It is allowed, it is witnessed, it is encouraged. So that connection, that observation, is connecting it to the larger picture. It's the very scaffolding with which the entire hologram is formed. The allowance of the all is the superstructure that all things are actually molded around. It's the wires, the framework. The cyclic nature of existence is something that we have found as the prime creation is the most enhancive to any given experience. It's why every form of existence has a cycle of life. It is born, there is a senescence, it ages, and then it passes on. It passes on to a different form, which follows that same cyclic pattern. It is born, it ages, and then it passes on to another form. Your body follows that same cycle. Your skin cells are formed by sort of the chromosome DNA and cellular structure anatomy, cell division. And then they live a specific lifestyle, a lifespan, and then literally they commit suicide. It's called cell death. You can look it up. It's fantastic. Like there's actually a tone that they hear, and then they know it's time for them to die, and they don't they don't mourn their deaths. They literally die in the most efficient way possible, so there's no residue left over of their existence, and they are consumed, the nutrients of their existence, the benefit of the life that they lived is consumed by the whole, and then that whole divides again. But we all do that. Look at the human species. We literally live, we collect and consume experience, and then we document that experience, either through storytelling or books or expertise, as we call them, inventions. And then we pass on, looking to leave as little negative effects of our lives as possible, and only pass on that which is positive, and then we leave. And then the human species doubles. It ratchets. It's a cumulative, subtle effect. The cycles are also a part of the Pantheon. Motion is a part of the Pantheon. Time, experience, they have a righteous existence of their own, but it is a part of your righteous existence. When you relegate them to equal in importance, then you infuse your consciousness into each one of them. Your perspective expands with each new layer that you add on to the given moment. Then in the given moment, you can be the raindrop, and the storm cloud, and the ocean, and the evaporation, and the sun that is evaporating with it, the breath that is heaving through this planet, creating wind. You can be your body, and your soul, and your mind, every cell that you are made of, but also every atom, and every experience that it's ever had, from hydrogen to helium, to lithium, to bermium, carbon. Do you understand what I mean? The full aspect of creation exists within any given individual portion. When people say you can see the whole of existence in a grain of sand, that's what they mean. It's because the whole of existence righteously is encapsulated within that grain of sand. It's encapsulated within each one of your DNA, within the atom that makes them up. Every portion of yourself has the whole. It contains the whole. It is constructed of the whole. So if you want the most perspective, if you want to gain the most out of your existence, recognize that as an intrinsic truth and encourage it to expand on its own, and then allow each one of the sensory inputs to expand your perspective while you stay in the neutral of the epicenter of alignment, the neutral alignment, the totality alignment that is outside of viewing things as judgment, as good or bad, right or wrong, self or others. All of them are relevant inputs. They're relevant perspectives. Your perspective, your possibility of perspective, the reason why you were created is because you can process the totality information of the collective and then give it form, give it substance in the now in the way that pleases you most. Alright, it's time for totality. Listen, I love this. And that's what the green octave is about. It's about love. Love, unconditional and abundant. Of all forms of creation, because all forms of creation are you. We say, love each other, love others as you love yourself. No, love others because they're yourself. Recognize that you are others and the self, and love both equally. Love them so much that you allow them to be on their own terms, for their own reasons. Allow them to experience their own existence, and then experience your own. Experience it. Don't govern it. Don't guide it. Encourage it, and then move with it. Infuse it with your fire, with your sovereignty, and teach it its own. Encourage it to be sovereign. Encourage, literally, encourage your anatomy, like your male or female vessel, to have sex in the way that they want to, and then experience that. Witness how the sensation doubles and triples, it magnifies. The same thing is true of your passions and your drives, of your spiritual enlightenments, of your heart, of your love. All of them have individual existences. They want to live by their own sovereign free will. Allow that to happen, and then encourage it with your own. Infuse it with your fire. Don't govern, don't dictate. Initiate. Watch, love, allow, and then give shape. Share things with it as you do a child. Say, look at the sunlight. Feel how it is on our skin. Skin, feel the sunlight. Sun, feel my skin.